Welcome back to Table for Two, where the conversation is always real, sometimes funny, and hopefully leaves you encouraged.
Today's topic is one every pastor, church leader, and honestly every church member has faced. What do you do when people leave the church?
And that's never easy. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it feels personal, and sometimes it's just life. But the Bible actually gives us a story that hits close to home. Paul, Barnabas, and their breakup over John Mark.
And spoiler alert, there's a twist at the end that shows us what grace and reconciliation can look like even after a split.
We're calling this one a Bible breakup story. So let's dive in. This is Table for Two.
Through storms and swallowed our noise, church keys in hand, coffee and mugs, our lives held together by grace and a few hugs. They said she submits, we said we both do. It's not about ladders, it's me and you, serving the kingdom in aprons and jeans, laugh lines and calloused hands and holy routines. At this table for two, there's room for you. Pull up a chair, we'll tell the truth of love and faith with the side of faith-filled talk.
All right, before we get too serious, Nicole, what's the funniest or weirdest reason you've ever heard for someone leaving a church?
Okay, well this one, it was kind of funny because I was preaching at a different church that, from the one that you were pastoring. And I just got called to fill in for pulpit supply, and I was talking about how churches fight over silly reasons and how churches will split over silly reasons. And I used the example of, people are complaining because they painted the sanctuary eggshell white instead of bone white. And after the service, one of the board members came up to me and they're like, that was an actual reason for our most recent church controversy. We just changed the paint, we just repainted the sanctuary a couple years ago. And 5 people left the church because we used the wrong shade of white.
Wow.
Yeah. It was, I was pretty caught off guard with that. And I was able to honestly say I had no idea. I was not preaching out the situation, but I did notice when I said that there were a few people that shifted kind of uncomfortably in their seats.
Oops.
Yeah.
Accidentally put people under conviction.
Yes.
The Holy Spirit knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
You had no idea.
No.
Well, mine is, we weren't actually pastoring this church. We were there to interview. And if you've never been a pastor being interviewed, they do it all kinds of different ways. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there is a big meal, and that's when people ask you questions. Sometimes the board just asks you questions, and the rest of the church doesn't. But this particular church had a service where we sat on the platform, and people from the congregation asked us questions after the board had already grilled us. Mm-hmm. Which is fine. I'm transparent. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sugarcoat things. But one guy raised his hand, and he asked, what do you think about passing out Bible tracts? Which, as a kid, I did a lot of that kind of stuff. You're hungry and thirsty, and you want to share Jesus with people. And sometimes those things can be effective. Most of the time, what happens is those tracts get thrown in the trash. So I just honestly commented that to guys. Not saying those things are ineffective or we shouldn't use those things. But I think what's more important is that we develop a relationship with the person that we're trying to witness to and evangelize to. And I'm answering this in front of the entire church. Right? And this guy just gets up and leaves. He doesn't even stick around for the rest of the interview. He just got up and left.
Yeah. Although, according to one of the board members, part of that was the fact that I'd be preaching too.
Yeah.
But the nail in the coffin was the fact that we weren't going to be necessarily pushing Bible tracts.
Yes. Because I felt like my answer is honest. And it was truthful. I mean, how many of us have received a Bible tract on our window and actually looked at it?
Well, I remember I went to a protest one time during 2020, and there was this pastor that was spewing all kinds of hate from the other side of the road. Racist stuff, hateful stuff, straight up heretical stuff. I was just going to call it for what it was. And afterwards, his wife came up to me and handed me a Bible tract, basically saying I'm going to hell. I'm a pastor. I've been reading my Bible since I could read. I've had a relationship. I've had a relationship with Jesus since before I can remember. And yeah.
What about you as our listeners? What are some reasons that maybe you've witnessed, been a part of, or something like that caused you to leave a church or others to leave a church? Whether it's a silly one, a serious one, we'd love to hear the reasons that you've experienced. You can just leave that in the comments on our Facebook page tied to this episode. Again, we'd love to read through those. But sometimes people leave for serious reasons. Sometimes they leave for silly ones. Either way, it hurts. It stings. And that's why this conversation matters. So there's this remarkable verse in 2 Timothy. And Nicole, I'm going to ask you if you would read it for us.
Sure. It says, "Get Mark and bring him with you because he is helpful to me in my ministry."
Yeah, so Paul is writing this in this letter late in his life. And this is a very remarkable verse.
Yeah, because Paul once refused to take Mark anywhere.
Yeah. This just, people who leave, it hurts us.
Yeah.
It's a wound, right? Because we're used to seeing their face on Sunday mornings. Sometimes we've been friends with them for decades. Sometimes maybe we've not been friends for that long, but they've been someone we've really relied on and counted on. And then for them to up and leave, it leaves a void in our lives.
Yes. And the thing is when people leave our lives, they leave our constant interaction with them, it can be disappointing. And it disappoints us, it disappoints our belief in humanity, I guess. Like we kind of lose faith in humanity. But the thing is that can be restored.
That's right.
God can change that hurt to healing and into he can change it into a story of hope.
And that's exactly what this verse is leaving us with.
Yeah.
But before we explain why this is remarkable, let's first tell you what happened.
Yes.
All right, so this is what happened. We find this in Acts chapter 13, verse 13. It says, "Paul and his companions sailed from Paphos to Perga in Pamphylia." I know I butchered those names. John deserted them there and returned to Jerusalem. Now, you might be wondering, okay, the last verse talked about Mark and this one's talking about John. They're one and the same person.
Yeah, it's kind of like in the South how there's double names.
Yes.
It's the case here. His name's John Mark.
Yes. And so John Mark has left on a missionary journey with Paul and Barnabas and the other companions. And midway through the journey, he's just like, "Yeah, I'm going home." He's like Eric Cartman, "I'm going home."
I'm going home.
Yes. I left out part of that quote for a reason.
Forget you guys. I'm going home.
Yes. Now, why does he leave? We don't. The text doesn't tell us.
I've heard it speculated that he was homesick or that he was afraid of everything going on, and honestly, it's possible that he just had a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah, or maybe it's just he didn't feel like he was cut out for missionary life yet. You know, like this is way bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Which, I mean, ministry in itself is daunting, but when you're going around planting churches, I mean, that's something I'm too scared to do.
Yeah.
At least right now.
Yeah, you're trying to build something from scratch. You're going into potentially hostile environments.
Yeah.
With hostile people. And that'd be tough on anybody.
Yeah.
But maybe, who knows, maybe it was a combination of all these things. If you're homesick already and you're dealing with people like that, if you're fearful already and you're dealing with people like that, we'd all would be tempted to turn back.
Yeah.
Again, we don't know, but those are some reasons that scholars believe John Mark may have left.
Okay, but sometimes we need to realize that the people that, have left the church, the people that have left our influence, there's a reason for it. And just like we don't know the reason John Mark felt like he wasn't supposed to continue the journey with Paul and he went home, I mean, the people around us that might be leaving the church, they might have something that they're dealing with too. For that matter, we don't know. John Mark could have had a crisis at home that he was having to go home and deal with. And they just didn't know or didn't care to share in the account.
Yeah. But when we're leaders in a church, whether it's as pastor, board members, Sunday school team, or somebody that just fills the pew, right? When someone leaves like that, it feels like we've been betrayed.
Yeah. And even if they have a justifiable reason. I mean, like, I know that I've, when friends have gone off to college and then never returned, or they've left because they had a new job, or whatever. It's this hurt because, you know, they were so much a part of our lives. And now they're not a part of our lives anymore because there was something else that they had to do. And it's hard not to take it personal. And actually, I can think of a story specifically in Monongahela where an elderly woman, she was attending the church for years and years and years and years. And then her husband passed away. And her sister-in-law decided that they were going to live closer together. And it meant that they were moving out of town. And they were going to start attending a different church on the district because it was closer.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with the pastor at our church. It had nothing to do with us, but it still broke us because they were not going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
And there was some hurt. Our senior pastor was hurt over it. Like, he was broken over it. And again, nothing personal.
Yeah. And more to that story, too. Keep in mind, her and her husband had been leaders in that church for decades. And I remember sitting down with her because I got asked to fill in at that church where she was attending. And she said, you know, I wish I could go back. But every time I step in that building, I miss him.
Yeah.
I remember we always sat this one spot. I remember the things we did there together, and my heart just can't take it.
And what's crazy, though, is the pain continued even after she left, as far as like on our church's side, because it was about a year before anybody even sat in that pew again. Mm-hmm. Because that was their pew.
Yeah.
And we were just missing them so much.
Yeah. Now, again, sometimes someone leaves over immature reasons, you know.
And sometimes there's a solid reason. But immature reason or solid, it still hurts.
Yeah. And so, as leaders, we get it.
Yeah.
I mean, as a pastor, I take it personal anytime someone decides they don't want to attend our church. Like, it has to be me. There has to be something wrong with me. And
more often than not, it's me, and that's been evidenced.
But in the end, sometimes people make their own choices. We don't get to make choices for people. They make their own based on the way they're looking at their circumstances, things going on, whether it's things going on in their life or things going on in the church. And let's be honest, though, like, we can haw and cry about how much we miss them, and that's okay. But on the flip side of that, how effective can a body of Christ be if it's filled with people who don't want to be there?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a teacher now, and I'll tell you one thing. When a student doesn't want to be in class, they're not going to do the work as effectively as if they actually want to be there. If I give them a reason to be there and a reason to get excited about what they're doing, they will learn more efficiently, and they'll do their work. Mm-hmm. But if they don't want to be there, there's really nothing I can do to make sure that they get their work done.
Yeah.
And ultimately their grades end up suffering, and the same is with the church. If they're not wanting to be at the church, if they're not wanting to be in this particular fellowship body, they're not going to be effective, and it's going to cause the church harm in the long run.
Yeah. It's the same philosophy I have too. Like, I don't believe in just sticking a person in a role to fill the role. Because again, a person needs to be called to that role by God. Now, Now sometimes God might call someone to a role outside their comfort zone initially. Like right now, I've been doing a lot of work with the kids.
And I've been doing a lot of work with the sound.
Yeah,
and
neither of us are comfortable with those roles, but they are things that God has placed for us to do right
now.
And He's given us the gifting to be able to do that.
Yeah. But I'll tell you one thing: if you don't like kids, we will be hesitant to put you in that role just to fill the role because, again, if you don't want to be there, it affects the kids. Yeah. They know when somebody doesn't want to be around them.
Yeah. And as a pastor too, sometimes too, people will leave because they get put in a role that they don't want to be in.
Speak up.
Yeah, go talk to the pastor about it. Like, I've had people say, I'm interested in leading worship. They try it out for a little while and realize that's not for them. But to me, that's okay because they tested a fleece. They tested a calling and found out.
Okay, this isn't quite it. This isn't where I am.
And that's okay. Does it hurt? Yeah, because it's kind of okay, what do I do now as a pastor and leader? But on the flip side of that, it's, okay, I understand. We'll figure this out.
Yeah.
But again, it hurts, right? When someone leaves the church. All right, now that sets, the whole thing with John Mark leaving here sets us up for our Bible breakup story. And Nicole, why don't you read us about our Bible breakup story?
Sure. Okay, so this is found in Acts 15, starting in verse 36 and going to 41. And it says, after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let's return and visit the brothers in every town where we proclaim the word of the Lord to see how they are doing. Barnabas wanted to bring John, called Mark, along with them too, but Paul insisted that they should not take along this one who had left them in Pamphylia and had not accompanied them in the work. They had a sharp disagreement, so that they parted company. Barnabas took along Mark and sailed away to Cyprus, while Paul chose Silas and set out and commended to the grace of the Lord by the brothers and sisters. He passed through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches.
All right, so here we are. Paul and Barnabas are going to set out on another missionary journey. Go back and visit all these churches where God had moved and done all these great things. And Barnabas decides, you know what? Let's bring John Mark.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I didn't know until we started preparing for this episode was that John Mark is actually Barnabas' cousin. If you look in Colossians chapter 4, verse 10, it says, so does Mark, Barnabas' cousin. That adds another layer of this detail.
Yeah.
This is somebody that Barnabas is close to. He knows them.
Yeah, and so he's probably heard accounts from family members saying he's grown up so much.
Yeah.
Or whatever he was dealing with, it's not an issue anymore.
Yeah.
So
bring
him along.
Yeah, it's his family.
Yeah.
So he wants to give him a second chance. And most of us, that's how we are with family.
Yeah, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, Mark has feeling this call, and Barnabas is extending a helping hand. Mm-hmm. He should extend a helping hand.
Yes. But Paul, not related to John Mark, remembering that, hey, this guy was with us, we counted on him, and now he bailed. I'm not taking that chance again. I mean, we're going to be visiting these churches. What if he bails on us again?
Yeah.
It's too big of a risk. And so the text tells us they had a sharp disagreement. I don't know what that word sharp means in the Greek, but to me it applies.
It is a big kerfuffle.
Yeah, this was not just I don't think I agree with you, Barnabas. And Paul, it was not a gingerly conversation. This was two grown men probably yelling at each other.
And probably causing quite a bit of drama.
Yeah, this is a scene, right? This is like soap opera level things that happen. This is like church board meeting, and they're trying to decide on whether or not they should move something off the platform or not. A sharp disagreement to the point that the best thing, the most loving thing that Paul and Barnabas could do in this moment
is stop working together.
Yeah, they parted company.
And both were able to do what God wanted them to do, or what they felt God wanted them to do at the very least, without infringing on the other one. And that's something that we can take from this, is the fact that they parted company, But notice, Barnabas was able to follow what he felt like God was wanting him to do. He brought John Mark along with him. And then Paul started raising up another disciple.
Yeah, he raised up Silas.
And they ended up being a powerhouse in the in the early church. And sometimes we look at these disagreements, these sharp disagreements, and we're like, unless everybody just gets along, nothing's going to happen here. But instead, we ended up with two very determined evangelist groups out of the one.
Yeah. Okay, we're not saying God caused this split, right? That's not what we're saying. There's very, very much two men who love God, who love Jesus, who love sharing the message of Jesus.
And they just didn't see eye to eye.
Yeah. And I think they still loved each other.
Oh, 100%.
But they couldn't continue working together because they just didn't.
They had two very different visions for
Yeah.
their ministry call.
Yeah, they disagreed about how to handle a situation. Paul wanted to protect the mission, right? He's like, I want to protect the mission. I want to make sure I have everybody on my team that's on board, committed, understands what they're getting into, and they stay committed to it.
And Barnabas saw an opportunity to extend grace and a possible healing to somebody who had recently backed out.
Yeah.
Or who had previously backed out. And honestly, that both of those are powerful and important, and there's a place for both of them. But in their case, they weren't able to do it together.
Yeah. Churches, sometimes we choose different approaches when people leave, right?
Yeah.
Some of us, we want to love on the person. We want to run them down, try to get them to come back. Others of us are like, let the door hit them. Don't let the door hit them on the way out, right?
Yeah.
Is their mentality. And both sides think they're right.
And honestly, both sides can be right. Mm-hmm. Because again, it goes back to, why did they leave in the first place?
Yeah.
I guarantee you Barnabas knew more to the story of John Mark leaving than Paul did. Mm-hmm. And Barnabas was probably closer to the situation just because he was related.
Yeah.
Whereas Paul was able to distance himself and just he didn't see a cousin. He saw a immature youngin who bailed.
And Paul's also the type of guy, like, when you commit to something, you're committed.
Yeah.
And he probably knows the scriptures too. Like, was it where when God calls someone, Jesus is calling people, and he tells them to not turn back. Essentially, I can't remember exactly if Jesus calls somebody and they ask, well, can I go back and bury my dead father first? And Jesus says to him, let the dead bury their own dead. Yeah. And so Paul maybe had something like that in mind, right? Was it when Elijah calls Elisha
drops everything and
goes, right? He doesn't go back and try and set everything straight. He leaves and follows where Elijah's going. So Paul's got that in the back of his mind.
Yeah. And so, but again, like, going back to why did they leave? Mm-hmm. Like, there are people that they left for a reason that the rest of the congregation might not understand. But somebody in the congregation is chasing. They're chasing after them. They're like, hey, come back. Mm-hmm. We love you. Maybe they did something that they're ashamed of, and they're too ashamed to face the people again. Or maybe there was a misunderstanding and they took something the wrong way and they just left without discussing it. And so chasing after them might be the right thing to do.
It could be.
Because there's the whole breach was based on a misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. And then there's the people that, they don't want anything to do with that congregation, that church at all. They're just done with it. They feel a pull somewhere else, or they just don't see eye to eye with the church's mission anymore, or that particular congregation, and so maybe it's best not to chase after them because they have a pull somewhere else. God's calling them somewhere else. God's using them somewhere else, and so maybe those churches need to be like Paul in the sense of, okay, this is our mission. That's yours. Let's split.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes we need to be like Barnabas and be like, hey, There's hope, there's healing, there's redemption. Come here, John Mark. Let's join this mission together.
Yeah. But where we get in trouble, and I think there's two fronts where we get in trouble on this, is one, especially here in the United States, and actually it goes back to a question I got asked from the kids group one night, and we were driving down River Drive on our way to church for kids group, and one of the girls looked at
Friendship
Baptist and said, "Hey, are those your rivals?" Pointing at their building. And I said, "No, those aren't our rivals. They're wanting people to know Jesus, just like we're wanting people to see Jesus." And she was kind of confused by that. I'm like, we're on the same team. We're not competing with each other. If someone, and I've shared this with our church multiple times, if we're working on and trying to get somebody to know Jesus, yes, our prayer is that they're going to come to Ravenna Church of the Nazarene, get saved at our altar, and become a lifelong member.
Because that would be amazing.
But let's say instead they go to Friendship Baptist, they get saved,
or Ravenna Church of God.
Yeah, some other church gets saved there. That's still a win.
Yes, 100%. Because guess what? The kingdom is celebrating, and we are part of the kingdom.
Yes, and so that's part of it. We get too caught up in the competition of it's my church versus your church.
Yeah,
we get too caught up in our church is right, your church is wrong mentality. When in reality, we all have the same mission.
And the mission is to make disciples.
And get people to Jesus. And that takes me to my second point, which is sometimes it's not about who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah.
And because what happens in these situations a lot of times is the argument shifts from I love you and we both love Jesus to I'm right and you're wrong. Yeah. And you need to convert to my way of thinking.
And that is so not...
It's harmful.
Yes. That oftentimes it's not about being right or wrong. It's just we need to be faithful to where Jesus is wanting us. Mm-hmm. And if you're feeling a pull away from your local congregation because you're feeling God call you somewhere else, that's something to celebrate because God is using you.
Yeah.
And you know what? If somebody in your church, if you're a pastor and someone in your church is feeling a call and a pull to another congregation to serve God there, that's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Not something to fight.
Yeah. And if you're a church member that's feeling that right now,
be prayerful. Make sure.
Be prayerful about it and test that. But at the same time, too, when it comes time to make that decision to leave, be honest about it.
Yeah.
Don't go looking for reasons to be upset with the pastor or upset with the church and storm out. Don't be going out looking to make a scene. Just be honest.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, older people, right? They won't. Their kids, maybe they come back to the area, but they don't come to the church they grew up in. They go to another one. And a lot of older adults, they want to be where their kids are.
But they feel responsibility to their local congregation, and so they find a reason to leave.
Yeah, instead of just being honest, like, I'd like to be in church with my kids.
Yeah. Or, again, I feel a pull to this other congregation.
Yeah,
right
just
now.
be open and honest about those things. But again, it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about I love Jesus and I love you. Mm-hmm. And maybe, yes, we don't see this the same way. And maybe we're not going to continue walking the same way we've been walking. But let's keep walking.
Yes. Because we have the same goal.
Yeah. All right, so years later, right, we read it at the very beginning in 2 Timothy chapter 4, Paul sees this very differently. He sees John Mark in a totally different light.
Yes.
He says, he is helpful to me in my ministry.
John Mark is helpful to me in my ministry.
We don't get the story of that.
No. But ultimately Paul realized what we just explained is we have the same goal here. We're not in competition with one another. We're not it's not about who is saving or who God is using to save people. It's God's using you to save people. God's using me to save people. God's using Barnabas to save people. God's using Jason to save people. It's beautiful. And because we're all doing what God's wanting us to do, Jason, you're helpful to me in my ministry. I'm helpful to you in your ministry. And Friendship Baptist pastor is helpful to us in our ministry and vice versa. Because we are all serving the one God.
Yeah. And here's something, when John Mark goes off with Barnabas, again, we don't get the story. We don't get the behind the scene details here. Maybe some of you out there are smarter than me and have studied church history. Maybe church history has more information on this that I haven't looked up or researched.
Eusebius, let's look it up.
But John Mark grows up under Barnabas somewhere along the line. Barnabas raises him up to a point where now at some point he was ready to re-engage with Paul and Paul's style of ministry. He needed the Barnabas in his life to prepare him to work alongside the Paul. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to reminisce about is, so the last place I youth pastored was Monongahela, Pennsylvania. The funny part of that story is I had applied for the youth pastor position 3 times.
Yep.
The first time, the pastor sent me a questionnaire, and one of the questions is, what was the last book on leadership you've read? And the way I answered that question, he still makes fun of me about it to this day, is, well, I have a book on my shelf and I'm looking at it. Does that count? And that was my answer to his questionnaire. So he never called me back, never continued the conversation.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this was before Jason and I met. He was still married to his ex-wife at the time. And so when he submitted his resume the second time, I was the wife that was listed. And he's like, that doesn't look right.
Yeah, so that was kind of a red flag. But the third time...
Well, the third time, we actually didn't apply. The third time, we were looking at the same time he was looking.
Yes.
And he's like, we need to talk.
Yes, and it would turn it, and we never actually had any formal email exchanges. It was more of just more or less we started Facebook, or not Facebook, text message conversation back and forth.
Yeah.
To the point where Nicole was getting a little annoyed because it was like we were brothers who had been separated at birth and suddenly discovered the other one existed.
Yeah.
And to this day, we're still that way. Like we can't we can't even sit in the same room and watch the same service together because we're texting back and forth the entire time. It's kind of obnoxious.
It really is.
But I share that story because I had to go through all these other things to be ready for that third moment where contact was made.
And really, you would not have done well with him.
No,
if
I wasn't
you had
ready.
Not gone through those stories.
Yeah. I had to go and serve at the Calvary Chapel outside of my original denomination I started in, which made me realize I loved the Church of the Nazarene and wanted to come back.
Yeah.
I had to serve under Pastor Jim Finch and learn how to be more compassionate and a little more flexible in ministry. Like I had all these ideas. I was very Nazarene, and this is what the manual says, and we're going to do it. By the time I left Jim Finch, it was, okay, I'm Nazarene, but I understand what our manual says and how important it is.
But these are how we can gracefully apply it in this situation.
And so I learned things there that made me ready for when I got to Monongahela. I was an entirely different youth pastor.
You really were. And honestly, I needed to go through that stuff too, because otherwise I never would have appreciated what we had there.
Yeah. And so what we see here in this story, in this verse in 2 Timothy, it's a short little snippet, but it's a story of reconciliation, restoration, and grace. Mm-hmm. God brought them back together. So maybe you've just left a church, or someone has just left your church and left you hurt. Well, the end today doesn't have to be the end forever.
No.
How we treat the people on the way out may shape whether there's a way back.
Yeah. Because if we're leaving, if we're treating people with bitterness and resentment on the way out, we kind of close the door. And more like slam it. We slam it shut and we make them think it's locked. But if we bless them and release them to do what God is doing in their life, and let God do what he's going to do and grow them as he's going to grow them, then the door is open and they know it's open. And there's always a chance for that relationship to continue to blossom. And maybe for them to eventually come back.
Yeah. You see, when someone leaves your church, they're not leaving your gang for a rival gang.
Yeah.
We're not gangs at war with each other.
We're partners.
We're partners in ministry. It's just the partnership has shifted. It looks different.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what scares us.
Yeah.
Is we don't like change. We don't like things that are different.
Yeah. Going back to Monongahela, just as a kind of closing story. When we left there, we left with the church's blessing.
Yes, we did.
And we can go back anytime and feel like we are right at home.
That's right.
I love that church.
Yeah.
And I always will. When we go back and visit for any reason, it is like going home. Because rather than seeing us leaving as a conflict of interest or as an abandonment of the ministry there, they saw it as an extension.
Yeah.
And that's what it should be. We should be seeing people leaving and going to work, do God's work outside of our congregation as an extension of the ministry of our church.
Yeah. And that's really the purpose of the church anyway.
Yeah.
It's
to
bless and release.
Yes.
And matter of fact, for a long time, I got asked to do a seminar in youth ministry. And it's like a weekend where we had training events. For those outside of Nazarene'dom, I'm not going to go into to bore you with the details of why we did this. But my seminar was called Keys to Modern Youth Ministry. And no, it was the key to modern myth. I can't remember if it was plural keys or just key. But I start off by saying the key to modern youth ministry is a taser, which always got everybody to laugh. But taser was an acronym. But the last letter in the acronym was R. And it was release them.
Yep.
Why? Because my job as youth pastor
is not to keep them in my bubble.
No, it was to raise them up and to let them go.
Yes.
To a church where maybe you have young men and women called to ministry, called to preach, called to be missionaries. And that's called to be doctors, called to be electricians, whatever it is they're called to be.
And the thing is that might require them to leave.
Yes.
It might require them to leave your church and never come back.
Yeah. But your job still remains the same. It's to raise them up.
And let God use them for what He's called them to.
Release them.
Yes.
Release them with your blessing.
Yes.
Not your bitterness, not your resentment.
Your blessing.
Yeah. And I know at some point, you know, I had this realization here about a couple weeks ago when our oldest Jaden turned 12. She's going into 7th grade. And I had the realization that we have 5 years before she becomes an adult, before she graduates high school. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have to release her. And in some ways, we're already having to start that process because she's not a little kid anymore.
No. And we have to start equipping her now.
Yeah, and start letting her have some of the responsibilities that are going to be her responsibilities. Yes, we're still here to oversee her and guide her and walk alongside her. But she's not. She will always be our little girl. But at the same time, she's going to live her own life.
Yeah.
She's going to go off and potentially start her own family. She may or may not, right? We've told her she doesn't have to have kids if she doesn't want to. That's a whole nother discussion. But she's going to go off and do those things. And we have to let her do that.
Yeah.
And no sooner do we get done with that, then we have to deal with Ben. And then we have to deal with Emrys.
And then we have to help them when it comes time for them to release their own.
Yeah.
We have to be there and support them as they release their own.
And I, changing gears one more time. But I remember my grandpa Barnett when he passed away. And my Aunt Pam got up and was sharing about her dad. And it's always stuck with me. Because she said, my dad was never the type. He would give you advice if you asked for it. But if you didn't follow it, he would never come back to you with the I told you so speech. Because he understood it was our life. And he certainly had expectations and goals for his kids. Yeah. But he understood those were not his choices to make. It was theirs. And so when they did mess up and come to him after they messed up, because he didn't hit him with the "I told you so" speech, it was, okay, this is what we're going to do.
That is awesome.
And I hope I can be that way. I hope I could be known as that kind of person, that I never come to you with an "I told you so" speech, but I am a person that blesses you and releases you.
Yeah. So, if you've experienced people leaving your church, if you've experienced people leaving your circle of influence, or you've been the one who's left, just remember Paul and Barnabas and John Mark. Even the apostles faced it. The apostles lived it. It's part of the story. It's part of how the church continues.
And the remarkable part of this story, God can redeem even a breakup. Mm-hmm. People may walk away, but God is still God, and God is still at work. And sometimes, just like John Mark, God writes a reunion into the story. Well, thanks for joining us this episode of Table for Two.
If you found this conversation helpful, share it with a friend or maybe with your old church. I mean, I'm only kind of kidding.
Mm-hmm. Either way, we're learning how to handle these moments with grace. And hopefully today gave you some perspective, maybe even a laugh. And maybe you're going through something like this and you're unsure and you just need to talk to someone. Hey, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Message us. Message our Table for Two page. Post in the comments. Can I talk to you or something?
Yeah, we'll shoot you a message. Don't worry,
yeah,
we will.
We can message you. But we're all journeying through this together.
Yeah.
The best we can, walking in the grace of God.
Yeah. So until next time, grace and peace to you in the name of Jesus.
Through storms and swallowed our noise, church keys in hand, coffee and mugs, our lives held together by grace and a few hugs. They said she submits, we said we both do. It's not about ladders, it's me and you, serving the kingdom in aprons and jeans, lifelines and calloused hands and holy routines. At this table for two, there's room for you.